So why the return of Invoker? We're going to be watching today Stormer, the mid laner for Entity, play Invoker, and this hero has been popping up everywhere. I know Nisha on Secret plays it, I've been seeing a lot of my pubs, and in particular, Stormer has been very impressive on this hero. I think it is a specialty hero for him. He's been playing this hero for a very long time, and so of course if you are going to consider learning this hero, I would recommend it. I actually think that Invoker, probably for a while, now that the small camp is gone, will be good. And that's the big thing. Invoker in the past was not a great small camp farmer. He could take it eventually with Forge Spirit or maybe Meteor, but that's such a long cooldown. And so it wasn't really viable, right? Any hero that could kick you out of lane early and then just farm the small camp would generally beat you in lane and out-efficiency you. However, that's no longer the case, and Invoker, especially in the matchups where he's good, is extremely good, as Invoker in particular does one thing, and one thing only, and that is sit mid for an extremely long period of time and deny creeps with Forge Spirits. So in the current meta of no small camp, Invoker has really come back into the meta, and let's talk about how Stormer plays this hero, how he itemizes, and the spells he casts and when, and let's get into it. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the gameleap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually, you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the gameleap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below, I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. So naturally in this game, he was counterpicked by a mid Kunkka pick. Pretty standard stuff here. It's very natural to see when you see an Invoker to generally either respond with Lina. I see does quite well against it. I would say Shadow Fiend generally beats it, and Kunkka beats it. So you do need to be a little bit careful about that, especially considering those heroes have risen back into the meta, at least to some extent. However, I don't think it's the end of the world if they pick those heroes. You're pretty decent against them in the mid to late game due to Deafening Blast and putting Alacrity on a right-click carry, which generally destroys heroes like Lina and Shadow Fiend, who just can't man up to something like an Alacrity Morphling. Either way, getting into the lane, pretty simple on the items. You're going to max out on damage. This is the highest damage item build you can go, basically. From there, against Kunkka, things get a little bit weird. He's actually going to hit the Kunkka a lot, and the reason why is if you don't do that, and you just 50-50 CS against Kunkka early on, there's a very good chance that you'll actually just get kicked out of the lane from just getting out CS'd. I think the next thing he does, though, is the most important part of this lane, which sounds really stupid. I don't want to get into too much his like specific mechanics, at least not in this video. I'll be making more of those videos on the website and eventually on this channel where I just like really delve into specific mid mechanics of players. But he buys a second set of tangos and then a Gloves of Haste. The Gloves of Haste is really cool on Invoker in a matchup like this where you're against a melee hero. I definitely wouldn't recommend Gloves of Haste against something like Lina, for instance, because even if you try to trade, it's probably not going to work out. And the attack speed of Lina is going to make it where even if you do contest all of the creeps, which Gloves of Haste basically helps you hit the enemy and then contest the subsequent creep, right? Because a lot of the time, if you were to trade, you'll miss the upcoming denier CS. But with Gloves of Haste, you have just enough attack speed where usually that's not a problem. On top of that, Stormer is extremely good about switching to Quas in between every single CS. Like, almost every single time, with a few exception, he switches back to Quas, right? Gets a CS, is on Quas. Gonna go for a deny, goes back to Exort. Changes his mind, back to Quas. Gonna go for a CS, back to Exort. Changes his, well, nope, there's nothing to contest here, back to Quas. And he'll do this for the entirety of the lane, just to min-max his HP as much as humanly possible. And against the top players in the world, especially in a difficult matchup like Kunkka, if you don't do this, you're going to get kicked out of lane. And on the flip side, if you're against something like Ember Spirit or Void Spirit, a matchup that Invoker can actually win, and you don't do this, you're not going to be able to put the pressure that you really would want to. So basically what I'm telling you is make sure you're doing this strategy. It's really important. From there, if the matchup's good, you're going to contest every single CS and every single deny, and that is the entirety of your game plan. Sunstrikes are number 2 on the list. Please hear me out on that. If you have something like a Bane, and he's going to communicate when he's using Nightmare, okay, that's one thing. Or something like a Clockwork. In general, focus on the lane. Focus on your CS, focus on the denies, and you'll have a lot of success in this meta of flag bearers and those small camp. On top of that, he actually bought 3 sets of tangos this lane. I thought that was kind of cool. I feel like people don't really ever do this anymore. They're too greedy, as he actually does go for the sunstrike there. Doesn't connect, but doesn't matter. But yeah, he actually does buy a 3rd set of tangos. So very uncommon, but you know, at the end of the day, in a matchup like this, it is required, and I like him adapting to the matchup and not being greedy like a lot of players would have. So once the Kunkka has maxed out Tidebringer, I think he decides that the lane is just unplayable at this point, at least until Kunkka shoves it in. So what Stormstormer does is he farms the large camp. He actually gets a 7-minute Midas. He really seems to like to rush Midas. He does this, at least in the games I've watched, the majority of games. He really values just kind of sitting mid and getting farm, not worried too much about rotating. In fact, I don't think I've seen him rotate a single time pre-minute 10 on Exort Invoker. You just don't really see it. On top of that, you're gonna have mana problems. If you don't die, you should be spamming Forge Spirit. Like, Forge Spirit in the lane should be being used off cooldown, right? Off cooldown, period. So, when that's the case, you're gonna run out of mana, and if you TP to side lanes, you're griefing your game. It's really as simple as that. Don't rotate, guys. Like, it's just not worth it. A set of lane creeps, especially if it's a flag bearer wave, is worth the same as a support kill. So you really need a good reason to rotate if you're gonna rotate. It's gotta be like at least for a double kill or something like that. Otherwise, it's probably not worth it, and you probably should just sit mid. From there, he hits a beautiful sunstrike onto the Bat Rider here. This was really nice. I think the key thing here, or the main thing I would say in terms of hitting sunstrikes, is go for it earlier than later. Because the later you sunstrike, the more people will think about getting sunstrike. But this is a beautiful sunstrike onto Rezo here. I didn't even think it would kill, but it just straight up killed. That's the maxed out Exort for you, and yeah, just does 300 pure damage and secures the kill. From there, he's gonna go back to the jungle. And this is a nice thing about Exort Invoker as well, compared to something like Void Spirit. That seems almost completely out of the meta. Basically, Void Spirit, if he has a bad lane, has to gank. He has to force it. Exort Invoker, even if you had a bad lane, which generally you won't if you're using the Quas Exort strategy I showed you earlier, you're not going to lose the lane. But if you do, you can go jungle, and you should go jungle, right? The main goal is to shove the wave and then jungle. Getting towards like past minute 8, if the enemy has a maxed out nuke, it's not really worth trying to contest their denies. You're probably going to waste your time. If they don't and you've crushed a matchup, maybe it's something like Void Spirit who only has 1 nuke, but if he's maxed out to Simulate and can one-shot the wave, it's probably not worth your time trying to contest him, and you should be playing to max efficiency. Basically, if you're not sure whether or not you should stay in the lane and just static it on your high ground and deny all the creeps, or go to the jungle, the main thing I would say is, can the enemy team gank you easily? Like, for instance, this game, they don't have the best gank heroes on Secret, but they could gank him with X and a hook, or X and a Maledict. It's definitely an option. So there's that. And on top of that, he has a bad matchup against Kunkka, so it's super not worth it for him to stay in the lane. Next, let's watch him get a solo kill mid. This was beautifully executed. Really simple execution, but effective stuff. And this is the key to playing a good Invoker. You just have to know your few basic combos. Honestly, Invoker is a lot more basic combos than extreme stuff. If you're focused on hitting crazy combos with Invoker, you'll probably never be good at the hero. Like, really, I'm just being honest. You'll probably never be good at the hero. So as we see him go in here, this was a crazy kill. He wasn't even looking at first. This was wild stuff. But he gets the cold snap off, and then it's just going to be about attack moving, right? Attack moves, goes for the Sunstrike, follows that up with actually an Ice Path. Very strong on Quas Exort Invoker. The Ice Wall is actually extremely good. It's an 80% movement speed slow, which is actually insane. And it lasts for 7.5 seconds, even doing 30 DPS per second. So this ability is super underrated, and we'll actually see Stormstormer abuse the heck out of it this game. It's a great game for it, because until Secret has BKBs, their heroes don't have innate mobility abilities, right? There's nothing that gets out of Ice Path, not a single hero, not easily at least. And as a result, he's going to really prioritize it this match, and I feel like that's very impressive, as I feel like he thought about that. Maybe he just intuitively knows that it's a good game for Ice Wall and uses it, but we'll see it come into play. Alright, I don't want to cover this too closely as nothing comes out of it, but just for some perspective, the first time he left mid is right here, 14 minutes. Kind of unfortunate, he just uses Chaos Meteor to farm the mid wave, so it's kind of not a great time to gank. I see why he does it, right? I definitely see why he does it, but it would have been way better if he had the Chaos Meteor. As early game, that's a really key ability. You can see he takes the point in Wex. I think he took it at level 9, if I'm not mistaken. The reason why you would take it at level 9, or sometimes at level 10, is because you want to have 4 points Quas and 4 points Exort for 2 Forge Spirits. That's the timing in which you get 2 instead of 1. So when you're going this build, you have to go 404. There's no question. You're really playing around Forge Spirits for pressuring mid, denying creeps, and farming. And then from there, at level either 9 or at 10, when you can't take another point in Exort, you can go for the point in Wex, and that's what he does here. Now with bots, you can start playing in the side lanes. Like, at this point in the game, it's very difficult for a lot of heroes to farm side lanes without feeling threatened. Invoker can do it very quickly with Chaos Meteor, Alacrity, and most importantly, Forge Spirits. So basically, what I'm telling you guys is that you can essentially shift the lane that you're playing with one of your side laners. For instance, if your side laner is something like Viper, and he's extremely afraid, maybe he's having a bad game, he's afraid of getting ganked in the side lane, slow hero, doesn't have bots, doesn't have, an ability like Forge Spirits, you can go to his lane once you have bots and just flip the map. You don't have to sit mid as a mid laner just because, mid is in your title. It's super not how you want to play the mid game. For instance, Batrider, as a mid laner, also often will play the side lanes getting into the mid game to, number one, amplify his own farm, as there's more camps around the side lanes, at least more conveniently located camps. It's easier to farm a side lane camp and then a neutral creep camp. It's way more efficient than the mid lane with how mid is set up right now. I don't know how this play works. Like, this is crazy to me that this works, but the most basic mid game combo is Cold Snap in Tornado, in a Meteor, in a Deafening Blast. He's going to use this pretty consistently. I don't know why Rezo walked through the Chaos Meteor. I think he expected to get hooked out or something. I have no idea. But somehow he kills a Batrider with the combo. A very tanky Batrider, and follows it up with Forge Spirits into Cold Snap, which is often what you're going to go do next, right? After you drop your massive load on the Batrider, and then you go for, after that, then you want to summon your Forge Spirits, right? To follow it up and often finish the kill. And we're going to actually see it immediately as he sets up in the bottom lane, and very often this will be a pattern with him. He actually sees himself as a setup hero. Especially with Blink Dagger, you have the option to go in, or more importantly and more effectively, walk up and then disengage. A lot of bad players will actually always blink in, as he actually goes for a defensive blink here in fear of the Kunkka X. But good players almost always early game try to blink out. It's very rare where you'll see them, especially minute 15, 17, 20, any of these like early-ish timers, blinking on people unless they're 100% isolated. Good players will always assume there's backup and then play around this fact and kite out. You can see after he casts the Chaos Meteor, he's actually retreating a little bit, not necessarily even looking for very many autos. Does go for 2 basic autos here, but nothing complex, nothing dangerous, nothing risky, as he does get X'd. Goes for the Deafening Blast later on, and they do a great job of just kind of kiting out this fight and eventually finding their way onto the Kunkka. Goes for an Alacrity onto the carry, and yeah, it's just great spellcasting. This Ice Wall upcoming here is beautiful as well. Hits the Ice Wall. Always try to blink in front of the person. If you don't know how to cast it, basically you want to blink slightly in front of them, or if you're going to blink in line with them, like, once again, try to blink slightly in front of them and then cast the Ice Wall. And that's the best way to do it, as he picks up the kill onto Rezo. Ice Wall is such a broken ability early game. Like, if they don't have a counter to it, if they don't have a Force Staff or a mobility, this ability is straight up insane, and it kills off the Batrider as well. So eventually Stormstormer is going to buy BKB here, and the next thing that I do want to mention is his love, absolute love for Clarities. My man is constantly popping Clarities as he ships out 3 here. You rarely want to go back to base. We actually will see him run back to base quickly here. The Batrider pressured him out of the bot side of the map, so he makes a smart play, the efficient play to go bottom as he looks for a Sunstrike. In general, as Exort Invoker, it's your job to push the side lanes, right? It's 100% your job to push the side lanes. You are the guy who's going to make that play. That's first things first. And then on top of that, optimally, when you're going to push side lanes, you're actually blinking to the side lane instead of botsing to the side lane, because you want to actually bots into the fight. As we'll see here, he's going to lead the fight with a Cold Snap Meteor onto the Witch Doctor. Ends up being honestly a mistake here, as the Witch Doctor had Voodoo Switcheroo, which gets him out of harm's way, and then goes for the Alacrity onto Pierce Morphling, and that is a lot of damage. What I really love next about Stormstormer's gameplay is his discipline when it comes to going high ground. A lot of players have the issue where they're going high ground, they feel the adrenaline, their team is trying to end the game, and they jump in, right? He's got a Hex here. He should be confident, And unfortunately, kind of runs out of mana, but it's a good Hex, right? Really beautiful Hex, kills off the Batrider. And I love the Hex purchase, by the way. It's fantastic. They only have a Shaker, and it's actually a follow-up to the Fissure, because Fissure isn't that long of a stun. Hex is, of course. And so it's really great, right? Because Shaker doesn't want to just Echo Slam the first person he sees. He wants to Fissure into W and use the Shard. But that's only like a, 2.5 second stun? It's long, but it's not enough to kill a lot of heroes. And so this Hex is great. It's their only disable is the Shaker, right? They have an Omni-Chen morph. So it's great for him to pick up this disable item instead of something like Ags or anything of the sort as they get the kill. Now he's actually running out of mana. I thought their team was going to back here, for a moment, but they get another pick off onto the Witch Doctor, and now they can continue to look to go high ground. They actually force out the Glyph, and he has some mana problems. I actually thought he was going to tell his team to get back, but they decided to commit with the Alacrity and just shred the racks. Morphling with Alacrity is different. From there, once again, he understands his purpose. His main purpose now at this point in the game with the Hex is the Hex. And that's exactly what he's looking for. He's looking for an ISO target. Resolution goes really out of position here, like really out of position, to be honest. And they pick up the kill onto the Batrider. All right, now let's get into the fun part of Invoker, which is your late game spell casting. Almost all of the orbs maxed out at this point. By the way, he only took one talent, completely skipping all talents until level 20, where he takes 80% Chaos Meteor damage. And basically in synergy with that, he picks up a Shard, which casts 2 extra meteors on the side, and most importantly, reduces the cooldown by 15 seconds, meaning you can often get 2 of them off in a fight. It's still a 36-second cooldown, but this ability is insane, so that kind of makes sense, right? The main thing about Invoker in the mid to late game is using Meteor in combination with a stun. It's your best ability outside of Alacrity, I'd say, for DPS, and so, yeah, it really just great follow-up with the Fisher. Goes for the Hex as well. I don't know, who did he Hex? He hexed the Pudge. Probably should have hexed the Kunkka, I'll be honest. Definitely should have hexed the Kunkka. Either way, they get the kill. From there, Alacrity going for the Kunkka. Gets halberded, but it doesn't matter. Beautiful Tornado to actually save his Omni Knight on the side. And then against illusions, often you'll offer Deafening Blast. The Naga dies, so it doesn't really matter. Ends up not mattering actually at all. And they finally find the Pudge. From there to end the game, pretty basic. Forge Spirits plus Alacrity, and that's going to be GG. Just a beautiful performance from Stormer. Clean, not overforced, didn't rotate early on, just focused on using his Forge Spirits, switching to Quas, buying Tangos, sustaining the Kunkka lane, making sure he just doesn't die, doesn't feed, plays it safe, right? From there, farms the jungle, gets a 7-minute Midas, hits level 10 before Kunkka does, which is really, really impressive. Hits a couple of Sunstrikes, only really 2 in the early game. They don't have too much setup for it, so it's really not his priority. You don't need to pick Exort Invoker for Sunstrikes. Is it good? It's good, but you don't need to prioritize it. Unfortunately, we couldn't watch him dominate the lane this game due to the matchup, but often you'll see him do that, and that is one of the benefits of Exort Invokers. So very clean gameplay. Love the Hex purchase. Such a beautiful game for Hex. They also don't really have dispels. No one can really get rid of the Hex. They actually just can't. They straight up can't get rid of Hex. So it's a great Hex game. I don't even think there's a 4-staff. Yeah, there's literally not even a 4-staff. So there's, okay, there is. There's 1 4-staff, but it's on a core. His Meteor combo on Hex is going to do crazy damage if there's no 4-staff or Glimmer Cape. And there actually basically wasn't this game. But alright, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, before you tune out, subscribe to the gameleap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.